So what are we talking about today?
Oh, how about we talk about if or when we should tell people at work
Mm,
that you have been diagnosed with cancer?
mm.
What do you think?
Let's go for it.
Let's go for it.
You want to start?
I'll start. Um, and so funny enough, I just spoke about this at work actually, telling a little bit about my journey, and somebody asked me, "Ooh, how come you have the courage to tell people this?" And and I think there's two sides to it. I think the first one is pretty rational. At least in my case, I would say something was clearly wrong when I was diagnosed with cancer the first time. So I think that everybody around me was able to notice that something was not right. And I felt like the best way to make sure people understand to what extent or what it is that's not right, I might as well just tell them. So it's not like I wrote an email to the whole company, but the people around me, like the people that I work with, I basically told them. And I said, here's what's going on, and it's gonna suck. And that's why I'm a little bit off already. Probably like a week and a half, 2 weeks. I can't remember.
Mm.
But just before I had my surgery, I told people, hey, I'm gonna take off a little bit because I was diagnosed with cancer. And that was the number one reason for me to do it in the first place. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
Uh, a question that comes up for me is, do you feel like that helped you telling people? Do you want to talk about that
Yeah.
experience a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it helped. I mean, there's definitely an element of I rather tell my own story than have people kind of guessing or, coming up like, are you okay? That kind of, I'm more of a straightforward guy, I guess. Um, but it was also really hard in a way. Like, it wasn't just like easy. I think when I told not not the team that reports to me, but my peers, that was probably the first and only time that I really bawled at work.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could not, and I had told my boss before, and I had told the head of HR before,
Mm-hmm.
because they needed to know. And then when I told my peers, that was really, really, really hard. Um, and you don't want to be pitied in a way. You don't want to be conflicting trauma on others, and that's kind of what I heard. Like when I told the story at work, I think there were very different reactions to it. There were people saying, "Oh, I don't want to burden my team with this." I was like, "Fair." Then there were people saying, "Oh, I don't feel comfortable sharing this because it's very personal." Fair. So I'm not saying people should do it the way that I did it, but I think I would do it again the way that I did it because it felt like the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it felt like the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to stay on you if that's okay,
Go.
because recently you just were asked to give a talk to the whole company, which is a big multinational company, on leadership and your own struggles and your own personal story. And this is over 3 years later, but definitely the first time that you've had a semi public forum
Mm-hmm.
talking about a subject like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's different. I think when I told the people around me when I was diagnosed, it was more out of necessity. It felt like, okay, I gotta tell people what's going on because I don't look well and I want to own that. And then this time around, telling people about it, which kind of some people I've told over the years, people that I've been close to, and this came more about from conversations that I had with people. And then somebody asked me, hey, would you be comfortable sharing this in more public? And by the way, not only that I had cancer, but also that you had cancer along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And that's more reflective, right? That's not in the moment of the heat.
Yeah.
And I think
But it
I
still brought stuff up
oh
for
yeah.
you, even though
Oh yeah.
it's a few years later,
No.
right?
Yeah, I think I was just about ready to do this without crying again. And not that that's a bad thing, but kind of reflect on it and share what has it done to me as a leader, as an employee in the company.
Mm.
Um and and I think more than anything, I think it just shows, even in the workplace where we have a certain role, we're also human beings.
Yeah.
And we also go through shit, just as we go through happy times, right? And people usually tend to share when they get married or when they have a child. And
Mm-hmm.
there's like hey, let's have coffee for Peter because Peter just became a dad, or Mary just got married, and things like that. But there are also the not so positive sides to life that tend to be kind of maybe
Taboo.
pushed under the table, taboos when it comes to maybe burnouts or sicknesses,
Mm-hmm.
or death in the near family that's maybe not so talked about.
Yeah.
And I think this was a good opportunity to normalize that, yeah, cancer can happen to somebody in your team, and it doesn't need to be somebody who's close to retirement. It can be people who are in the midst of life. And how do we treat somebody in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
And and I mean, there's many reflections. I think the number one thing is be empathetic, and don't assume that you know how somebody wants to be treated at a moment like that. I still don't think I know how people want to be treated in a moment like that, even though I have some personal experience with it. But I think it's wrong to assume that other people want to be treated the way that I wanted to be treated.
Or that other on the other side, that other people know
How they
want
want to be treated. Yeah, I think that's a really good reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think one of the big learnings is be kind, give space, and if really in doubt, ask the person, how can I respect you in this moment? How can I give you what you need right now? And that might be a deep conversation, or it might be a space. Just don't talk about it. Because, at least for me, remembering back, work is also a happy place to some extent, and it normalizes also. So going back to work was in a way weird after the surgery, and in another way it was good because it brings a bit of normalness back. And so everybody needs to find their own way on what they need in that moment.
Yeah.
And probably also depends on how long you were away from work,
Yeah.
and how, maybe also how tired.
Yeah,
How
it's
tired.
physically
Yeah.
active,
Yeah. How,
depending on what the course of treatment is.
yeah. So maybe it's more like a staged return at some point,
Mm-hmm.
or a longer break with rehab and whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, for me, I think the biggest learning was be empathetic, and try to hold that space for people, because at least now I try to be more sensitive to anybody who is going through anything like it. and hopefully the conversation that I had at work can help at least somebody a little bit to feel like, okay, there is other human beings in this organization that also go through tough moments like this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not easy. I had huge sweat stains after that conversation, like gigantic sweat stains.
Yeah, I think that's a healing moment for you.
In a way, probably too. Yeah. Um, But yeah,
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I feel like tough things or personal things are hardest for me to share with acquaintances versus strangers or even
yeah.
versus loved ones.
I think loved ones know because they care, they can feel it.
Yeah.
Like it's probably at least for us, I think for both you and me, it would be really hard to hide something like this from a parent or a
Mm.
sibling or a really, really close friend. And then I think I agree with you. The stranger is kind of like it's the airplane talk, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Never, never
whatever,
see you
I'll
again.
never see you again. I'm not going to share my real name. And I'm going to tell you everything. Um, no, I fully get that. I think, I mean, in a way, it makes us vulnerable, but also in a way, you give information to somebody else who you don't have the same level of information about them,
Mm.
and you need to be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Like I need to be comfortable that somebody
Absolutely.
somebody in the company is going to come up to me at some point and will say, "Oh, you're the guy who did the cancer talk."
Yeah, that's so
Right?
true.
Like it's going to come. Right?
Yeah.
So I hope I'm not turning into cancer guy, but so I at least thought about, am I willing to accept that that can happen?
Yeah.
And am I willing to accept that there might be some pity, even though I tried really hard in this talk not to come across as I'm looking for anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is still a work environment and you also kind of, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you want to be treated as an employee and as a colleague and first.
Yeah.
Um, so that was loose thoughts I had, but then also I didn't overthink it and I just did it. So here we are.
Way to go. All right, guys. I'll see you next time.